Hello, First Family, First Game Changers, and Changing the Game is back. I am excited to be back with all of you here live. Last month we were on Twitch as part of the Beyond the Bot series, so I hope you all had the opportunity to check that one out. If not, head over to the First official Instagram account where you can check out some of those interviews that we had with a senior writer at ESPN, an American Ninja Warrior, the first female coach to ever coach in the NFL and also be on Madden. We also had a IT services manager from the Miami Heat and a pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds. So that was a jam-packed episode on Twitch. And if you didn't get a chance to watch it, you can go over to the YouTube. So I'm excited to be back with Changing the Game powered by Rockwell Automation. Today's guest is absolutely incredible. She has accomplished many things that most of us would not even dream of like trying to attempt. And I'm super excited for her to share with us some of those experiences. And we're going to hop in right away and throw her in to the live with because I can't wait to get into some of the incredible things that she has accomplished, and definitely make sure to throw some of your questions in. Hey, Rea, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for joining us. Is that a
Thank you
Spartan
for having
Ultra
me.
hat?
Sorry?
Is that a Spartan Ultra hat?
That is a Spartan Ultra hat.
I
I'm
love it. I
trying to
can see the
hide 'cause
purple.
I'm trying to hide. I haven't washed my hair in a few days.
No worries. You just came off the mountain, right?
Yeah, sort of. I did a few errands, but basically.
Okay. That's awesome. You're always on some type of adventure, and that's why I'm so excited to have you on. In addition to a pretty cool and very impressive STEM background, I feel like your adventure racing and athletic accomplishments are very impressive. And for those of us mortals
Yeah.
who don't go on these type of adventures, but are interested in the science and engineering and even just some of the motivation and perseverance aspects of your journeys, I can't wait to get into some of that. So I know you've got an extensive background. I'm pretty familiar with it, but can you go back to early on in your childhood? Were you always into sports? Were you always outside and exploring and playing around? How did that kind of journey begin with you into the direction of sports?
I think I can thank my mom for that.
Okay.
She put me on skis, I think, when I was 2, and then rollerblades shortly after, and
Okay.
bikes, and at any possible thing that she could put me on, she did, and I think I probably loved it all. I do remember she told me that I would refuse to hike a trail. I would always
Okay.
hike off trail, and if she wanted to take me on trail, I'd make her carry me. Um, so yeah, I think I've just always been like a very active child. And then when I was like 5 or 6, I would always watch cartoons upside down, and so she figured that she'd try me for gymnastics, and kind of fell for that and stayed with that for many years.
Okay, great. And we've got a lot of great love in the chat already. We're just getting started and we're seeing lots of hearts and a lot of kind of hellos from different parts of the world. I see Spain, I see Brazil, Calgary. When you were on the Eco Challenge, I know you represented a team Canada Adventure, but
Yes.
you live in the U.S. now, right? And you were born and raised in Slovenia, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a mix here. So everyone in the chat, throw in your flags, where you're from, what team number. Definitely throw in some love from the global representation that we have in the room here. So yeah, you had a mix of those experiences, and it's great to see that your parents kind of guided you into that path. Would you say the same happened for your STEM education, or was that totally different? How did that come about?
I always like sciences in school. I
Okay.
guess growing up being a gymnast, sports was definitely my priority number A, and
Okay.
school was just something I had to get out of the way to go back to practice. So I would like do homework on a bus ride home just so that I could go to sleep early so I could go to practice early. But I always actually enjoyed doing like math problems and physics problems, and
Okay.
it always like was something that I had interest in, but it was kind of overshadowed by my interest in gymnastics at the time. And
Okay.
then when I quit gymnastics, I feel like I was kind of looking for this next challenge, and sports weren't it at the time. I was just kind of overtrained, needed a break from like structured trainings,
Okay.
all of that comes with it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of threw myself into sciences because they said it was hard and that women don't do it as much. So sounds great. I can do this. I never really thought much what I wanted to do in my life, which, looking back, I kind of wish I did, because I did find that I love working with people, love, being outside. I love writing. But I'm just really good at science too, and that interests me as well. But like,
Okay.
maybe I don't really see myself as being like by myself in a lab, working that kind of career. And I feel like some, thinking ahead of what I wanted to do. Like when I stopped doing gymnastics, I was like, oh, maybe I want to be an astronaut. And so I did astrophysics,
There you
actually
go.
looking into what you need to do to be an astronaut, and then realizing I don't want to do that.
Okay.
So I just always kind of like the challenge. I like the kind of exploration, whether it was about my limits or about like things around me. So yeah, that was kind of like a break from sports.
I love that your break from sports was to take on a very challenging degree, and we need to quote what you said about this sounds challenging, and they say girls don't do it, so I'm just gonna do it. And I love that about
don't choose your future that way.
Exactly. Okay, that part is valid. But I love that you have that mentality of taking on new challenges, blazing a trail, and I'm sure that'll help some of the young people on this call understand that just because someone like you hasn't done it before doesn't mean that you can't, if you're passionate about it or if you're up for the challenge. And so I know you've done a lot of things that most people haven't done when it comes to your racing and your competitive nature. So it's cool to see that applies in both worlds. And that's where I kind of want to go next. And it seems like you mentioned a little bit of there were these kind of different periods. You had your gymnastics period, then you had your more focused on education and engineering period, which you got a master's degree at Stanford, correct? And did you go for a PhD as well, or just master's?
I was working on PhD at the same time. That was actually the first goal. So I got into Stanford for applied physics PhD.
Okay.
And I did a little bit of energy science, and then I moved more into bio, like medical imaging, the physics part of it. But then as I was doing that, I started racing Spartan more and more. Okay. And at some point I've realized that research wasn't really fulfilling me in a way I thought it would. But I really wanted to get higher education. So I figured I would try to do masters at the same time, finish that, and then see what I want to do. And when I finished that, I realized I wanted to be an athlete. So I left at that point, finished the PhD unfinished, but I think it gave me a lot of skills that I feel like even if I'm not using the degree right now, they apply in life in general. So I definitely don't see it as like, something that I tried and didn't finish. I just see it as skills that I'm going to have even if I don't have the degree for it.
Absolutely. That's one thing I try to stress always, is that an engineering degree or STEM degree will open so many different types of doors. It's the skill set that you gain from that process that you can apply to anything in life. And that's what I really want to go into next, is some of those areas where you may have seen the application of, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your degree, but of technology into the sports that you're passionate about. So I'll let you choose whether you want to talk about gymnastics, adventure racing. I'm particularly interested in adventure racing, and I saw that we've got a couple people in the chat that said they're watching Eco Challenge right now. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's on Amazon Prime. You can check it out, and Rea's team did very well. And it's just a really cool experience. My wife and I watched it as well, and it was such a great show. And the challenges that you guys went through were incredible. So you can choose from those different areas. But of some of those sports that you're passionate about, are there some areas where you have seen kind of science and technology impact the sport significantly, where most people may not have realized that?
I feel like any sport that goes uphill, material science is very, very important. Because every ounce that you carry uphill counts. And so you want to have gear that is super light, but you also want it to be functional. So like, you can make things out of like plastic and it's going to weigh nothing, but you're not going to do anything on that because it's just going to break. And so, for example, like for Fiji, we spent a lot of money buying the lightest piece of equipment. So Ryan Atkins, who
Okay.
was in the team with us, he basically
Yeah.
found like, where can we cut a gram? And we cut all the grams we could.
Wow.
And that makes a big difference because, you know, everything you're carrying that's extra weight and you're carrying that for 7 days, that's going to compound. And then, for example, right now, in like, I was doing a lot of schema racing over the winter, and that's another area when gear is just so important. So I switched from, you know, regular racing boots that were I'm not sure what kind of material they were, to carbon boots, which were probably lighter than my running shoes, and without putting any training in it, like, you know, shaves 3 minutes off of your ascent, and
Yeah.
over a course of 24 hours that compiles into many minutes. And but you want, like, especially in schema racing, when you're skiing downhill, you're skiing pretty aggressively, so you want your gear to be able to make turns, to be able to, like, you know, ski over rocks and like do all those other things and not break. And so I feel like science in terms of cutting weight makes a very big difference. Maybe not so much in running, but any other sport that requires a bike, a ski, like a raft, whatever else you're going to use. If you're going for a long time, and if you're going for time, and especially if there's climbing involved, that's where, you know, we kind of look for what's the latest technology that cut more grams off of it.
That's such a good point that I maybe wouldn't have thought of all the time, because if you aren't competing at that long of a distance or for that much time, you might not think about that. And so it's great to hear that you have that example. And I know our teams, especially at the first robotics competition level, they have to meet certain weight requirements as well. So they're getting some of this experience on your robots that you might be able to then transfer into material design for any kind of product that you're interested in the future. So great kind of tie there to what the students are doing, to what you're experiencing in real life. And I've seen that, you know, in other sports where materials have a significant impact on the sport. We had an Indy race car driver earlier that talked about some of that. And so students, make sure you keep looking into those areas. I studied mechanical engineering. I probably should have studied material science because I really like chemistry, and I was
Yeah.
determined between chemical and mechanical, but I didn't know material science engineering existed. So I wish I would have met you before that. So you could have told me to go down that path. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Students, keep throwing in the comments your team numbers, your countries, but also throw in some questions that you might have for Rea and some of the things that she's sharing about her experiences, about material science. Maybe even an aerospace question we'll throw in at there if it makes sense. But
I almost studied that. I was deciding between going to PhD for aerospace engineering or applied physics, but I liked California better, so I went for applied physics.
Yeah, so let me give a reset, because I feel like I know a little bit of your background, but I want to make sure that everyone gets an understanding. So you did study at Berkeley for your undergrad, correct? And then went and did your material science engineering at Stanford for grad school. And then you've done ultra racing with Spartan. So for those who aren't familiar, it's obstacle course racing, but at very much longer distances. So we're talking marathon distance for that, correct?
Yeah, and 24 hours.
Okay, so you've done both. Yeah, you've done the marathon distance and 24 hours with obstacles. So if one of those wasn't hard enough, we're also throwing in some challenging obstacles. I believe the last ultra, was that in Iceland?
It was in Sweden.
In Sweden, okay.
Ure, which is above the Arctic Circle, so it was pretty dark and cold, and it was very snowy. Wow. That's actually where the hat is from, I think.
Okay, yeah. So intense conditions, very challenging as a feat on its own, but you throw in the conditions, you throw in the environment, you throw in the mountains and hills, that gets more challenging. Rea was also on Eco Challenge Fiji, which was aired on Amazon Prime, and her team had to go through a series of challenges, everything from canoeing to rafting to rappelling, climbing, hiking, biking. Literally any way you can get around that's kind of human powered, I think you all had a factor in. And how many days was that again?
So we finished in 6 days and 23 hours. We were an hour and a half behind the winning team, and then the cutoff was 12 days. So teams were finishing all the way up to 12 days.
12 days. Okay. So that gives you all a better idea now of the incredible things that Rea is doing. And she had originally a gymnastics background as well. So you mentioned the science behind the materials and not having to carry heavy gear up, or the light, the every gram counts. Is there any area where you feel gave you a particular advantage during this past competition, or is there anywhere where we just wouldn't think of it at all?
So I think sleep is what made our race, or the
Okay.
lack thereof.
Yeah.
So the way it all revolved, where we were pretty close to the front, and then we got to this paddling section where we were about, like, I believe 26, 27 hours in, and it was a choice of do we want to sleep, and we decided not to because the tides were coming in.
Okay.
And so we had to paddle up a river. So we figured if we paddle up a river right then when the tide was coming in, we'd have a little bit of a help from the ocean.
Okay.
So we didn't sleep. And then we got to the next section and the sun was rising. So we figured we wouldn't sleep then either, because now our circadian rhythms are figuring it's time to go. And so we got to the next camp, still in daylight. So we figured we'd keep going. So we were basically going on about 38 hours of no sleep. I was like falling asleep, like paddling this raft we built. And that's when that big flood came in. It was like a flash flood that basically closed the canyon. It was us and 5 other teams that made it through the canyon, and we were already on the river, which was the next section, and they couldn't pull us off course until about 6 hours later. Everybody who didn't make it through the canyon had to wait there. And so we sort of separated the field between the top 6 teams and then everybody else. And so had we not decided to continue the race sleep deprived at 27 hours in, I don't think we'd be anywhere near the top. And so I feel like that was one of those crucial decisions that kind of made the race. And it's also, I think that's like one of the most interesting things to me is, the sleep deprivation, because a lot of the sports are very physical, and you can push through a lot of physical on a, pretty big lack of sleep. But in adventure racing, your brain is also very important because you don't have a set course that you follow. You have to navigate using map and compass, and that's pretty brain intensive. So when you're really tired, you start going in the wrong direction, and doesn't matter how, like, if you go faster in the wrong direction, you just get more lost. And so I think that's like one of the areas that I feel like, like science, if science could tell us, like, when you feel these sensations, like have some sort of like monitor that like monitors your like brain function, and when you get below a certain level it tells you to go sleep, I feel like that would be a big game changer. But it just comes down to so much guesswork, like, because you can't like quite tell, like, am I still functioning, are we all just like crazy right now, or are we going in the right direction? And that's like a big part of adventure racing, because clock never stops. It's 24/7 until you get to the finish line.
Okay. And I'm sure nutrition plays a lot of a role in that. So the mix of sleep deprivation, the way you fuel your body. How did you guys monitor your hydration and your food intake to make sure you have the right energy?
Yeah, we were trying to kind of aim for like 200 to 300 calories an hour the whole time. So basically, there's really no risk of eating too much in those races, because you burn so much, you're going to be in deficit. So you just try and eat as much as your body will let you. It was my first big adventure race, and I made a rookie mistake of bringing a variety of boba bars, which meant variety of flavors. And I ate one boba bar an hour every hour for 4 days until my stomach was just like, all right, we're done here. And like then every now and then we came to a camp about every 36 to 40 hours, and we had real food there. So really there isn't much like science to it, other than like trying to get 200 to 300 calories an hour and not exceed 60 grams of carbs, because that's basically the limit of how much your gut can absorb. But anything else is just going to cause the GI issues. But other than that, just like whenever you can, try to eat, because you're not going to have a problem that you're in a food coma ever.
That's wild. And I guess that's an area that would be cool if we could have more ways of monitoring what's in our body and what it needs. So like, when your car runs out of gas, or it needs oil, or there's different check engine lights type of thing. If our bodies could have some type of check engine light system, that we could more kind of strategically monitor an athlete in an intense environment like this.
And with that, like with the glycogen, that's like what your body primarily uses to, create energy.
Okay.
Once it runs out of the reserves, it will start pulling it from other systems. And so,
Mm.
like when your glycogen depleted, you're not gonna think as well. And all of those things you like don't notice until you like just bonk, which is when your glycogen is so low that your body gets worried that like it's not going to be able to basically sustain basic functions to live, and that's when you just run out of energy and like you're like flat and can't do anything about it until you replenish that. And it doesn't really come like there's no check engine lines for that. You just kind of have to make sure that you're
Good.
eating, and once that happens, it takes a while to get out of it. So like that's one thing you really want to avoid at these long efforts. And there's really right now, I don't think there's a way to monitor that when you're in a race.
Okay. I see. What about from a safety perspective? Are there certain things that you bring on with you on course, or does the production of the race have certain things that protect athletes, whether that's something that's heavy tech or not? How does that kind of work?
So we actually had a little like radio that was all
Okay.
like in this like enclosed vacuum thing. And if you needed help, you like break it out and assemble it. And
Mm.
it had, you could like communicate with it by
Okay.
typing a message, but it had two pre-recorded functions. One was like SOS, like we're like screwed, we need help right now. And
Mhm.
the other one was, I just don't want to race anymore. So you can press either of those. And they had actually for the entire race, because I think it was like satellite based, or I'm not sure how the radios worked exactly, but there wasn't really good coverage in Fiji. So what they did was they
Mm.
had a helicopter do like circles, like figure eights above the island throughout the entire 12 days, just to bounce the signal off of the helicopter back
Wow.
to the headquarters so that they could at any time receive a message for help. In terms of what we brought, we didn't like, we were really going for performance.
Mhm.
And so we figured if we're in so much trouble that we need all these other safety things, like we're not racing the way we want anymore. So
Yeah.
we kind of banked on like, let's just go without it and save the weight. And if things happen, then we're out. So really we brought like the mandatory gear, which required, first aid kit, and then like a emergency bivy, which was kind of like that emergency blanket, but it was a kind of like a sleeping bag, which is what we also slept in, like on the floor in
Okay.
the jungle. We didn't bring any sleeping things with us on the course ever. Um, and then you bring like duct tape and zip ties and other things to like fix things on the go. But we really were like traveling really light and didn't bring anything big in terms of that. So kind of hoping, nothing happens.
Yeah. You hope you wouldn't have to use that. Okay. You said you had to assemble the device?
Yeah, it was vacuum packaged in
Okay.
like different pieces, and I think that was so that no like water came in or moisture came in,
Mhm.
and it was like out of the box working when you needed it.
Okay, I see. Yeah. That way, if you really are in trouble, it's not going to malfunction on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. I see some good questions and comments. Keep them going. We'll get to those in a little bit, but please keep throwing them in there and keep throwing in the hearts for Rhea and her team. And that's what I want to get on next, actually, is the team aspect of it. So this is not an individual challenge. It's very difficult already. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made as a team, and you're kind of need to make sure that everyone's okay to move forward, right? And so our teams are taking on very challenging tasks as well, where they're designed so that they can't complete the whole thing within the time structure that they have. So there's a lot of similarity there in terms of the environment that you need to create as a team. Are there any things that really helped you all make it to that point from the team leadership and team kind of building aspect versus the competitive aspect?
Yeah. When we started, before the whole race started, we basically went through what everyone's roles are. And so we were pretty clear on, what you had to do in a certain situation. There were like, of course, the backup roles and everything, and things were smooth, but we really never questioned who we're listening to. And so
Okay.
in a way, we were never losing time because, we were arguing or we didn't know who had the say, or like we got to a transition and the navigator was doing maps, like I was doing something else, Ryan was
Yeah.
doing something else, everything was like pre-assigned. So in the moments when our brains weren't working and when we were stressed, there was like you didn't have to make those decisions, and I feel like
Okay.
that was a big, like, things that you can plan ahead and plan for, like, situations going bad and what are you going to do when that goes bad, and have thought through that just kind of brings it up naturally when you're in a stressful situation. You need to react pretty quickly.
Okay. I think that was a golden nugget for our teams because, having those clearly defined roles when you're in kind of crush mode and like crunch time is critical. And
Yeah.
so for all of you teams out there, I think spending some time early on to clearly define roles and help people understand what everyone's role and responsibility is going to help a lot down the road when, like you said, your brain isn't working
Yeah.
anymore because you've been spending so much time on your robot, or there's a lot of pressure from the particular competition. I think that is a golden nugget for all of our teams there. And I want to take that then to one of the questions we got from, I think it's Guilherme from Brazil. He wants to know, for the students that are working on their projects, um, do you what do you think kind of they can think about when keeping accessibility to a sport in mind? Do you think, I know it's a very challenging sport by design, right? So it's not necessarily a sport that is built for everyone. But have you seen anything in the community, whether that's adventure racing or obstacle course racing, to make it more accessible, more open to a wide variety of communities? And is there any innovation that can be leveraged there?
Oh, that's a tough one. I haven't really thought about it very much, but um, I know that, like, just having a team definitely helps with that. And um, in terms of technology, I mean, I feel like, um, there's always improvements that can be made that can make, like, sports accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's really hard for me to think of an example right now, just because,
That's it.
I feel like when you're in a position of privilege and things aren't a problem to you, you're not always forced to think about it. So um, that's a really good question, and I might want to think about it more and then maybe get back to you when I've formed a more well thought answer. But I feel like, there's always room for improvement. I feel like right now sports, and especially endurance sports, are, a high privilege. um, like, you need time, you need resources, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
have able body, basically, to be, like, super competitive in it. And I feel
Yeah.
like it's not made, the obstacles, everybody who's not any of that has to overcome obstacles that people like me don't even have to think about. And so we're thinking about cutting grams, and somebody else might have to think about, are they going to be able to climb up a waterfall, because it's not the equipment just isn't made for accessibility for that.
Yeah.
um so that's, like, a really good point that, like, made me realize, just, like, how lucky we are, so that I never actually had to think about this
Yeah.
question that hard.
No, and that's totally fair. I see that in a lot of sports, even in robotics. There's a certain cost to be able to participate, and we try to work together as a community to remove as many of those barriers as we can for students that want to participate. One that I can think of is just the fact that it was aired on Amazon Prime this year, so that the awareness is out there that this is an opportunity, this is something that people do, um, and that these are some of the struggles. I know it was challenging. I know there was a lot of talk about how your team didn't get a lot of airtime, but there's like 60 something teams. And I know you mentioned stuff like that it is very difficult to encompass all of that's going on over that period of time with so many teams. But I did like that they showcased kind of some of the teams that were doing this for the first time versus some that were very kind of like veteran teams. And I think showing that there's different levels and that you don't necessarily have to be at this elite level to participate and enjoy the sport and grow and learn from it that having it televised is helping people understand and maybe then take on that opportunity. And so I'd love to see more of that in our community as well, more opportunities for us to showcase what the teams are doing and how others can get involved, even if they're starting small.
Yeah, and I feel like, like the level of effort put in the teams put in that were out there for 12 days,
Mm-hmm.
and the effort we put in that were out there for 7 days, I feel like both of those are like equally exhausting. Like it was hard for
Yeah.
us because we didn't sleep, because we had to push really fast, but it was so much harder for somebody who was out there for 12 days, because by
Yeah.
that point we were on the beach sleeping for 5 days already. And so I feel like that it's always, no matter where you end up, if you're in the front of the pack, mid pack, or in the back of the pack, the effort is usually always the same. It's just, the more you do it, the more you learn, the faster you become. But none of those, like, it's not easier for anybody, no matter where you finish. It's always just, what's the world's hardest race? It's the one where you put your hardest effort into it.
Absolutely. And so one of the teams here is saying that all the issues you talk about literally happened in FTC, which is First Tech Challenge. So there's parallels here between that. And I love the way that you place it, that whether you're early on team or you're a veteran team, everyone's putting going into this challenge, and everyone can learn from it. Guillermo, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. He says thank you, and their team is working on many ways to make as many sports as accessible to the visually impaired as possible. So if you have any
That's
ideas,
awesome.
yeah, if your team has any ideas for Rea and her sport, please tag us in those ideas and let us know. I think it'd be cool to then pass along to some of the leaders of Adventure Race or Spartan Race, whatever it may be, to
Actually,
those
to
ideas.
that point, I know one of the teams had, I believe she was legally blind,
Mhm.
or like no, sorry, she was deaf, and so
Okay.
her problem was that during the night the communication became really hard, and
Mm.
communication is really important in these races because the headlamps kind of shine the light on the person who's looking at them, and
Okay.
so she had trouble reading lips because she was blinded by the headlamp but didn't see the
Uh,
lips. And so like that was basically their struggle. They couldn't really make much progress at night because
okay.
they couldn't communicate. So I don't know, like if you could somehow make a device that illuminate people's faces in a way where they could still see but not blinding the person they're talking to, that would like help, I think, that community, you know, be competitive at nighttime as well.
Okay. I love that. That is such a great idea. I hope teams will consider that. If that was an idea that you had, or one that just kind of sparked some excitement right now. I love that we have a real life application that you kind of witnessed during this season that could open up the gates for people, or at least make her experience a lot better. And so I think that could also be applied to a wide variety of other sports. So again, if you guys start working on that idea and you come up with a prototype, please let us know, tag us in it, and then we'll make sure to get it over. But if it is for the deaf, so to get it over to that team potentially
Yeah.
and to try it out. So that'd be great. Um, awesome. So again, we've had just lots of really good questions from the audience. So let me go back to one other one that I wanted to take a look at. And so I know you mentioned that you kind of had your break from gymnastics and then you focused more on your uh, kind of educational career. But this Revelation Robotics was asking if that their team has a lot of student athletes, which can lead to conflict sometimes. And do you have any advice or tips on how they can balance maybe multiple priorities, even if it isn't specifically athletics and education? If you have some of those examples, that'd be great too. But if not, how do you balance some of those multiple priorities and decide what to do when there are potential conflicts?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to being able to manage the time really well. There
Okay.
was a period of time when I was working on my PhD, my master's, and I was competing full time. And I basically had to have like the whole week planned out ahead of me. I
Okay.
had to do all the food prep on the weekend, so I didn't have to do any of that during the week. And it was, like it's hard. Like you just have to be focused, and you can like spend time on Instagram or Facebook. But I feel like if both of those things matter to you a lot, you're gonna find time to get it done. And I feel like
Okay.
one thing, like as an athlete, I will never skip a workout, and I will make sure my work fits around that, but I will get my work done. So I might not be able to, do the work like 9 to 4 like other people do. Sometimes I'm doing 8 to 10 p.m. and then the next morning before I do my workout while I'm drinking coffee and waiting for like my breakfast to digest. So I feel like just being flexible with time
Okay.
and not judging athletes for the fact that they do want to prioritize their training, but also like they also have to show that they're going to get things done. So like just being an athlete, that's not like a free card. You still need to
Yes.
get your work done. You just might have to do it at different times.
Okay. I love that, the way that you put it. I think that's a thing that a lot of teams across the world struggle with at times. But if you set the expectations, and again, we go back to what you were talking about with planning and setting the expectations of the team roles. If you set that up front and if you plan your week up front, that's going to make reduce a lot of that friction and allow everyone to pursue those things that they like. From my perspective, what I try to do is I try to choose like the three things that are very important to me. And for most of my life, that's been family, fitness, and my career or education, right? And so I determine, is something adding value to one of those areas, or is it distracting time from some of those areas? And if you can really prioritize your time, because you can't really manage it, everyone gets the same amount of time,
Yeah.
but if you can prioritize it correctly towards the things that you're truly passionate about, you'll find that you truly do have enough time to go after those things that you love. You just got
Yeah.
to make sure to take those distractions off to the side.
And maybe like another thought I just had, if like the team roles have some tasks that are more time flexible. So like, for example, like testing probably has to be done when you have access to whatever equipment you're developing. But
Okay.
then data analysis can be done, at a later time. And it doesn't matter if that's done like in the evening or like at an odd hour. So maybe divide the tasks, like giving the athletes the roles that have more time flexibility, that will be, that they can put around their training time, because none of us are training 24/7. So we all have time to sit on our asses and do things. So yeah, that's like just another thought that I had.
I love that one. So I hope Revelation Robotics. I hope you guys are still on and heard that one, because I think that was a very valuable tip. Almost having a list of opportunities that have that flexibility, and then when you have a student athlete that expresses interest in wanting to participate, but is also sharing the expectation that they're going to have all their commitments, you can present them with those different kind of leadership opportunities that they can apply more, I guess, effectively to their schedule and their passions. So thank you for that tip. That was fire. You've got a lot of good ones, right? What I love about this one specifically is they can go do that right now and say, here's our list of different roles that have certain types of expectations, and making that clear early on can help everyone. Great. So again, keep throwing in any questions you all have for Rea into the comments. We'll address as many of those as we can. The next one I'm very curious about is, you're in a sport that it's not a sport that the masses do, I guess you'd say, right? You need a very particular set of skills, and you're friends with Evan, who's a teammate of mine, and the way I look at Evan's brain is just very different. There's something in an adventure athlete's and endurance athlete's brain that says, I'm going to try this really crazy thing that no one's ever done or thinks should be done or thinks is even safe sometimes, and I'm going to do that. And so, is there anyone or that you draw inspiration from for that? Is it just part of who you are? Are you fueled by those crazy challenges? Where does that come from? And if you have a thought on this, how can teams that want to do very innovative things that haven't been done before, invent something that hasn't been done before, find a cure for a disease that we've never been able to really help people with? Well, how can they apply some of those tips into that kind of relentless pursuit of innovation?
Yeah, I guess for me, those things aren't hard. I think that's the big difference. Like, it makes me super excited when I'm like, oh, like I wonder if I can ski for 24 hours and see how far I can get, or like I wonder if I can like do this 7-day adventure race when I haven't done like a single adventure race before, or like knew how to mountain bike in April and the adventure race was in
Oh man.
September. So those things, like, it just like it sparks my interest and it consumes my brain, and it's like all I care about. And so,
Okay.
people talk about like, what are the sacrifices you have to do what you do, and I'm like, not being able to do what I do would be a sacrifice. Like, I don't consider other things a sacrifice. So I feel like if you really do want to make a change, and if you want to make something, create something new, you have to be passionate about it. I feel like
Yeah.
you can't fake that. Like,
Okay.
it's gonna get tough, and you're gonna struggle. And like, I asked myself, like, why are we here? Like, when Eco Challenge, when we were swimming up that river and it was so cold, and I like wasn't sure if I was gonna just like sink to the bottom and be like, okay, that's it, we're done with the race. And you're like questioning all of your like choices that led you there, and you really have to have a pretty damn like strong resolution of why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like, if you ask me why I'm doing it, like, I just say I love it. So it doesn't have to be an answer you can put into words. You just have to know that that's something you want to be doing.
Okay.
And in the times when, like, it's harder, you don't have any ideas, I feel like you also have to be aware that those times are going to come and they're going to pass. And so just, when I'm out and things start hurting, I just tell myself, just put one foot in front of the other and do the best that you can. And that's all that you have to do. And so when you're in a lab doing testing and things are going wrong, like, just keep repeating what you can do. And, if that's the best that you have that day, that's enough. And then also give yourself grace. Like, take rest days. Like, we need rest days in sports, and brain needs rest days just as much. And for me, when I was in grad school, I came with my best ideas when I was out running in the mountains, not when I was in the lab trying to solve a problem I couldn't solve.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's always like a balance, but I feel like, there's always like some sort of imbalance in that balance when you really care about something. And I feel like that's what makes the difference.
Okay. I feel like that in the first, I run much shorter races than you do. So in the first, let's say after the half-mile mark, there's something in my brain that always says like, oh, it's okay to slow down, or like, today you don't have to podium, or, and then what I try to do is just like say, okay, it's fine that comes into my head, but now let me push it out, right? And just understand the reason why you're doing it from the first place. Again, even if you can't put it into words, or you can't really describe it well, just dig, whether that's in your heart or your mind, to kind of what inspires you in the first place. And I think the other key thing that you said that will apply to a lot of our students here is that, I'm going to put it into different words, but that engineering is just problem solving, and you get to decide what kind of problems you want to solve. And why not solve the problems that you're passionate about, right? That not just because there's a certain need in a certain area, or someone told you that this is a good type of engineering. Figure out what you actually like, what would drive you and excite you to solve or to create, and go after that, because that's where you're going to do the best work, is in the areas that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Great. We've got a question here that I'm popping up in front. How do you manage or adjust your lifestyle when something out of your control happens? For example, an injury, family emergency, something that just throws, and I think that chopped off the question, but an idea around the things that aren't necessarily in your control that just kind of happen along the way.
Yeah, I guess for me, like, the most relevant thing is injury. I don't have like kids or anything that I would, put first.
Okay.
And I don't like, I guess, like, I own a van that occasionally breaks down and like, puts my adventures on hold because I have to fix it. But really, like, I feel like for an athlete, like, injury is probably, the most of derailing event. And at the start, like, I just allow myself to be really mad and like really be frustrated. Like, why did this happen to me? Like, because sometimes, like, exactly what you did wrong. And then you go back to like, why did I knew that I was too tired. Why was I going so fast on this trail and I sprained an ankle? I knew that was going to happen. And so I just let myself be like upset for, a day.
Okay.
But then, like, after that, I really try and focus on things I still can do. And it's rarely that it takes you out and you can't do anything. So I just like focus on developing those other things. So like if I have a sprained ankle, well, can I bike? Okay, I can spend more time on the bike now. Or like if I can bike, well, maybe I can use this time to finally catch up on work that I've been putting off.
Okay.
So I, instead of like looking at what I lost, I try to look at all the things that now I gained because this thing happened. And sometimes things just like suck, and it's okay if you're like really mad and really upset, and you know, letting those feelings come and acknowledge them, it usually what makes it better.
That's great advice. I gotta start doing that more myself as well. But I think it applies very well to the teams. Again, here, there's each one of your teams has many different aspects that you need to try to accomplish. And so when something's not going well in a particular area, or you can't access something, then there's a lot of other different opportunities on the team, and you can go and support your teammates on kind of that space. So I want to go to my favorite question now for every guest we have on here, which is, if you had a magic wand and you could ask, the first community to work on a piece of technology or a solution for you, what would you want to see created for any of your sports?
Oof. Probably like some sort of, kind of like what I was talking before about like the lack of sleep, because a lot of my events and things that I'm really, you know, that excite me usually involve some sort of like longer than a daytime period, and it's really hard to figure out when to like take caffeine pills to improve my performance, or when to like take a nap so I'm not losing time because I'm slowing down.
Okay.
So if there was like a device that would like monitor your brain activity and tell you, okay, you're useless at this point, take 20 milligrams of caffeine and you'll be okay, and then take it again in an hour, or like no amount of caffeine will bring you out, take a nap. So more of like, not so much in terms of like technology. I feel like that's like, you know, pretty like worked on and, you know, brought down to the grams. But I feel like human body still has so much of an unexplored thing, and things are so individual. You know, when you listen to podcasts and you try and learn about like caffeine, like the end of the day was like, it depends from person to person, and we don't know. And so if there was a way to monitor your own body and monitor these like basic biological processes that eventually, you know, determine where your physical limits are, and be able to push those in like a scientific way, I feel like that would be pretty cool.
That's great. I love that. So teams, if you're doing any kind of research on brain activity, on monitoring things, I know there's watches that can track your heart rate, and there's different kind of things that are getting more advanced there. But I think, like you're saying, there's still a long ways to be able to fully maximize and understand what the body needs and when, and for different styles of people. So if you guys come up with any cool things for that, I think a lot of athletes would be interested in leveraging your ideas. And I think also for athletic safety, we've talked about in the past around, for example, football athletes that collapse from dehydration because they're playing football in Texas in summertime, right? And that could help in a wide variety of ways. What about some things that can help you with sleep?
I have no trouble with that.
Okay, you're good. You'll knock out right away.
Today I went on a ski tour and I set 7 alarms because I was worried I was not going to hear them.
Okay.
I'm lucky.
Yeah, that helps a lot then. I'm looking at the questions here. We've got a lot of people from Brazil on the call today, so obrigado. Thanks for joining us. Happy you all were able to join in and get some ideas from Rea. So if you guys have any last questions, we've only got a couple more minutes left, so maybe we can take on one more after I ask this particular question. But if you have any, throw them in there. Rea has been sharing some very valuable tips, both on the technology side, on the team working side, on even just kind of managing and prioritizing your time as well. So one of the questions that I have, and that I like to ask a lot of people, especially during these challenging times, but specifically to an endurance athlete, I think is very valuable to get your insight from. In terms of perseverance, especially during this past year that's been very difficult for many people, that hasn't kind of shaped out to be the way that they expected it to be. Some of our students are seniors, and maybe they're not having everything that they wanted in their senior year in terms of competition and robotics. um, what kind of thoughts or tips can you share just on continuing to push forward and persevering towards the goals that they have, or the passions that they're interested in?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, like races, competitions, all of that, that can all be canceled. But the fitness or the knowledge or the skills that you gain, those are going to stay with you forever. So, you might not be able to, do a competition or, show your knowledge that you gained this year, but you're not going to lose it. You're only going to gain it until next time. And no like horrible period lasts forever. But the things that you learn, stick around. So I feel like finding ways, like I feel like this year has been really good at showing people what they really want to do with their life,
Yes.
because things that were extrinsically motivated were like pretty much gone. And I think that's in a way is a good thing, because I feel like life is too short to be doing things you don't want to be doing just because there's like an award. um, and I feel like if you're doing things because it actually interests you and because it's something you want to invest your time in, then it's a little bit easier to see that there are more benefits to what you're doing than just, place at a competition or, whatever else we're missing out on right now. But yeah, I feel like that, and then just having a support system. All of us have bad days, and it's really important to have somebody to talk to, and to admit that you're not doing well. When you're not doing well, I feel like that, usually makes you feel better.
Yeah, and you all know that First is a wonderful community. So even if you don't have someone in your direct surrounding, reach out to another team, reach out to someone that you met at a previous event. I'm sure our community will embrace that. So I want to give you one last chance to share anything that you're coming up, any big adventures or projects that you're working on, how people can stay in touch, and any other kind of closing thoughts you might want to share with our community.
Yeah, I'm doing another adventure race in May. We're doing an Expedition Oregon, and we're having actually a reverse co-ed team. So normally adventure races require one person of the opposite gender, which tends to be one female, three guys.
Okay.
So we're racing with three ladies and one dude.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to smoke everyone's asses.
Yes.
So we'll see how that goes. We're training hard. And then after that, I'm, hopefully if the borders open, if the pandemic gets a little bit under control with the vaccination, I'll be in Europe in June working on some projects and trying to set some first times on various things I have in mind. I'm going to try and dive to the lowest point in Slovenia, which is where I grew up in, swim to the shore, bike to the mountains, and then summit the tallest peak. So that's kind of the project for the summer in Europe. And then, doing races here and there, whatever happens. But yeah, that's I've kind of learned to not get too stoked about things that are 3 months out, because you don't know where the world's going to be in 3 months.
Yeah.
So one thing at a time.
Okay. So basically you want all the records, which I love, and it's great. And then I love the fact that you're doing, what did you call it? Reverse co-ed? Is that what you called it?
Yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah. So three women and one male. Especially, thank you for helping us close out Women's History Month on the live here. You're an awesome example of just kind of taking on those challenges and just going after the goal that you set, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your gender is, rich, poor, whatever. Just go after those things and support yourself with the right people. I think I learned from you too to let yourself be mad when you need to be mad for a short period of time, and then go, adjust from there. And I love some of the technology tips that you gave for the teams. If you're working on any of those, again, please let us know so that we can share it with the greater community and those that might be able to test out your prototypes. I specifically was excited about the one you mentioned with helping create something in terms of a headlamp for athletes when you were all out there at night so that the deaf person wouldn't be blinded when the others are
Yeah.
trying to talk to her and she's trying to get the kind of reading their lips. So I think that's something that our teams could work on. That's something that you all are capable of completing and would be a very impactful thing. And if you start working on something and it starts to look good, please share it with Rea and I, and we'll try to do what we can to get it out to the right people. But thanks again, Rea. This was absolutely incredible. I feel like I learned a lot myself. I know our community did. You answered some of their questions very well, as well as some of the general questions we had. And hopefully, when events come back, we'll be able to invite you over to one of the competitions.
I would love
You can
that.
check it out
Yeah.
and talk to some of the teams. I think that would be absolutely amazing. So. Thank you for your time and good luck with your upcoming adventures. Keep us posted on how they go.
Thank you. Yeah. Good luck with everything you guys do and keep me posted.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Ray.
Bye.
Bye.